critically analyzing global affairs. The Muckrakers on today's News Talk, TNT.
Well, welcome along. It's Andrew Eborn here with another edition of The Muckrakers, the show where we strip the day's big talking points down to their bare bones and devour the red meat of pure debate as we focus on the stories that matter to you wherever you're listening or watching around the world. Today, we're going to discuss Julian Assange because he's not appearing nowhere in the media after the appeal last week or so. But political leaders don't seem to mention anything about him. Will they continue to ignore him in this general election campaign? And Sir Keir Starmer, whoever he is, pledges recognition for the Palestinian state in his manifesto. Out he's come, another election point. What do you think of that? And finally, the European Central Bank cuts rates for the first time in 5 years. And as always, if you've got any thoughts on the topics we're going to talk about today, or even if you want to raise something completely different, do get in touch. It's always a joy to hear from you. And we've had some brilliant callers over the last few weeks. Today, the Muckrakers is made up of me, Andrew Eborn, and also Dr. Roger Gewolb and Juan Passarelli. Now, Dr. Roger Gewolb is a financial entrepreneur, financial services pundit, and lending expert, and founder of the Campaign for Fair Finance. He's also financed and run a number of lenders across Europe and in the USA, and has advised the Bank of England and UK Treasury on asset finance policy. He now works with leading parliamentarians, regulators, academics, trade bodies, and media on an initiative to reform the UK credit and lending industries. Juan Passarelli is an investigative journalist, award-winning filmmaker, and co-founder of Guerrilla Pictures. As a long-time Julian Assange confidant, for years he worked inside the Ecuadorian embassy and has regular access to Assange and WikiLeaks. He's also the writer and director of the brilliant The War on Journalism, the case of Julian Assange, which I watched again this morning, and I would thoroughly recommend that. Now, Julian Assange, he remains detained in Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison in southeast London, where he's been detained since May 2019, after London police dragged him out of the Ecuadorian embassy. It was only in June of 2012 that he entered the Ecuadorian embassy seeking asylum. Let me come to you first of all, Juan. You know Julian very well. But tell about how that relationship started.
Oh, I got connected to Julian through a mutual friend. I was right out of journalism school, and suddenly was dropped into this massive story in 2010 when they were releasing the third out of the 5 big American documents, military documents that relate to Chelsea Manning, which were documents about the Iraq and Afghan war. It revealed massive war crimes on pretty much every presidency since the war started, and I was asked to film them behind the scenes, and I became friends with them. And then throughout the years, different publications came about. I worked on researching them, making films with Julian. I even constructed a little TV studio for Julian inside the embassy so that he could communicate with the outside world. In the 7 years he was inside that dingy little apartment in central London.
And when did you last see Julian?
Well, I saw him last year in October. I went to the prison. He's still Julian in the sense that he's a brilliant mind, but his health is absolutely deteriorated. He looks extremely aged. You know, we've always had a 10-year, exactly 10 years gap. He's 10 years older than me, and person I saw there was somebody that looked not 53 but 70, you know. So this comes from years and years of being in isolation in terrible conditions inside the embassy. Although at the beginning it was a friendly embassy, he didn't have access to sunlight because simply there was nowhere where the sun shined in that first floor apartment in Knightsbridge. And he's been in solitary confinement for 5 years in Britain's top supermax, where the worst type of terrorists and murderers are held. Julian is an intellectual. He shouldn't even be there, you know? So yeah, I mean, that was the last time I saw him. I continued to cover his case. I think that his case is not only important to me because he's my friend, but because he represents the future of our freedom of speech, our ability to speak and to report and to report on what our governments do in our names, which is the basis of our Western democracy. Something that if he goes down, basically the ability of journalists to report on secret documents of the United States and other countries in the West will be gone. We live in a place where we can't communicate what the government's do in our name, good or bad.
No, you're absolutely right. And I spoke about this on the show when they had the appeal, and I predicted what the appeal was going to be, because they've been looking for reassurances from the USA before any extradition proceedings might happen. And the reassurance is obviously that he wouldn't be prejudiced because he's not a non-US citizen and therefore could rely on Article 1 about freedom of speech. And they had this sort of woolly language saying that he would be entitled to seek to rely. Well, that's no good. You need to have an absolute reassurance that they can do that. So it's predictable that he was going to get that appeal, or the right to appeal. But I'm really concerned about the man, because the report that we have is absolutely he's been suffering mental torture whilst he's been in prison. He's obviously, before being at Belmarsh, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, I think, for 7 years. And it's been a horrendous toll on him. So, Roger, how long do you think the leaders of the major political parties will be able to ignore Julian Assange? Because nobody's speaking up about it.
Well, I think that Julian Assange, and to a certain extent, speaking on his behalf, you'll forgive me, Juan, are kind of past their sell-by date. The freedom of speech kind of journalism that Assange started out with was, of course, quite dramatic and revolutionary, but there are a lot of new people, new bodies, new organizations dealing with freedom of speech today, such as our Free Speech Union here with Toby Young, and other people doing things in a less revolutionary and a far more effective way. And I guess I have to say that Julian has himself to blame for a lot of this and shutting himself away. I think also that the characterization of just about absolutely everything as a war crime removes the ability from a perfectly rational government to defend itself. And so I think the whole narrative has gone rather over the top and is out of date. And to answer your question, I don't think he's going to be mentioned very much, because I don't think he's relevant to politics in this country. What people care about here, I'm not sure about the order, but I think they care about the money in their pocket and taxation. They care about immigration and the Islamization of Britain, the protests in the streets, the rise in crime, the horribly inefficient government, and totally useless opposition that we have, and the just dreadful state of political leaders that we've got. And as one of my followers posted the other day, we have coming up in 4 weeks a choice between stepping in dog muck or cat muck. That's what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about freedom of speech per se at this point. And they certainly aren't concerned about Julian as the principal representative of that, because I think that date has long since passed, and he could have come out and not locked himself away and gone in front of a court. And yeah, people don't even remember what D-Day is. And I wonder how many youngsters who are going to be ruling the world even remember who he is, frankly.
The biggest problem is this, though, Roger, isn't it, is that all of the things that you mentioned absolutely of fundamental importance to the electorate and the British people. But without the right to speak about it, which is the fundamental right of freedom of speech, we'd all be in the dark, wouldn't we?
Well, yeah, but nobody's taken that away. I mean, we have the right of freedom of speech is amply demonstrated by the amount of BS and gaslighting we've been listening to for many years. And we're now deluged with it. I mean, the other night I watched the debate between Fishy Rishi Rich and Keir the Fear. And frankly, I turned off the telly and washed my shirt and spent the rest of the evening watching it dry. I mean, freedom of speech is in abundance, particularly at the moment. Nobody's trying to stop it. So I say it's past its sell-by date. It's like screaming about something when people are more concerned about immigration, talking about something else.
Yeah, I mean, I also saw the whole debate.
I agree with George
do come back, Juan, yes.
Yeah, I agree with George that Julian's Julian has a political. Hello. Oh, sorry, Roger. Sorry, Roger. The case of Julian is political, and the U.S. and UK government have been very effective in silencing Julian. But the idea that we have absolute great freedom of speech in the UK when the UK is holding the world's foremost journalist as a political prisoner is absolutely laughable. I mean,
wait. He's not the world's foremost. I'm not. He's not the world's foremost journalist by a long shot.
If he's the world's more secrets than every single Western media combined.
That's not what journalism is about. That's not what journalism
is about holding governments to account. And you say that
journalism is about investigating and reporting on all sides of an issue and allowing your viewers, readership, listeners to make up their mind. That's what
you've
journalism
definitely
is about.
not read any of the WikiLeaks documents because you dare to say that we didn't find war crimes in there. WikiLeaks
I didn't say that.
The Iraq War.
I didn't say. I said
a massacre of 7 people, including a 2-month-old baby, and then the U.S. ordered a bomb strike. That bomb strike was then that cable was shown in the UN, and the Iraqi government decided to not renew the immunity of the troops in the ground, and hence Obama was forced to leave the country. So it was torture in both wars, massive torture.
Yeah,
Thousands of people that were not accounted for by the U.S. All of these they changed the way we saw the wars. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to say that WikiLeaks did not achieve a level of these stories. The Guardian and the New York Times won.
If I could get a word in. Yeah, I never said that. I never said WikiLeaks. You're putting words in my mouth, and what you're talking about is irrelevant to what we were just discussing. What I'm saying is that let's just put the cards on the table. If Julian Assange is the world's foremost journalist, then I'm the principal dancer of the Royal Ballet. Okay, I mean, there's just no way. It's not the case. Julian Assange is a leaker. He's a wiki leaker. That's not journalism. That's something different.
That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean,
you're entitled to your opinion.
Exactly. No, I was there. I did the journalism with Julian Assange, and we worked together with the New York Times.
You're not a journalist either. I mean, all I know about
insane.
All I know about
you don't know anything about me.
I'm about to say the only thing I know about you is your Twitter feed, and I mean, it makes Che Guevara look like Mary Poppins. I mean, I've never seen anything so one-sided. That's not investigative journalism.
You've not seen my films. What are you talking about?
No, I haven't.
That's where I do my journalism. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm just telling you what's on your Twitter feed.
There's something very important about the free speech of this country right now, of the UK.
Right.
Since the Brexit decision in 2020, any journalist in the United Kingdom can be extradited for receiving, holding, or publishing classified information from the United States. This is a precedent. This is a fact.
So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? If somebody commits treason, why shouldn't they be held to account?
Well, you can't commit treason if you're not a citizen of that country. And secondly, this is what journalists do every day.